Hello, my name is Pham and this is my GT project about happiness levels of students during the pandemic. Whenever I picked out my topic, my intent was not only to study student emotions, but also their opinions on the pandemic. This way, I can form a conclusion statement with their happiness levels correlating to their opinions on the pandemic. I was able to interview 30 students individually and ask them these set of questions. How have you felt during March of last year, June, September, December, and March of this year? These set of questions relate to how the students on a scale of 1 to 5 have felt in terms of happiness. I chose these specific 5 months because of how they are a point of significance. March of last year is when the pandemic started, June is during the summer, September is around when school started, December is when we had our winter break, and March is the current month as of doing this project. Here are the graphs with data from the results of the questions I asked of students. Starting with March of last year, it seems like most students are between 3 and 4 on their happiness levels. This is the month with the highest counts of 5 on the happiness charts, which also means the happiest month. I think it's because students were at first happy with the extended spring break. Next is June, where it seems as there is an almost even balance between 2, 3, and 4. What surprised me the most was how many students put a 2 for this month. I think this is where there were more restrictions, meaning that people wouldn't be able to go out during the summer break, with vacations cancelled and public places closed. The month of September is probably the lowest month in scores, with 23.3% of students putting 1 for their happiness levels. My assumption for this is probably that this is where school started to happen and people's happiness levels were going down. Not only this is where 3 peaks out, which most likely correlates with school starting too. In the month of December, the happiness levels start to increase as now the majority of students rate their level at 4, and the rating of 5 doubled at 13.3% compared to last month's 6.7%. This is most likely because of Christmas break and students were able to enjoy a long break from school. Not only this, places start to open more, which allows students to go out a little. Finally, during March of this year, it sort of goes back to June, as it is the second lowest month in happiness-wise. I asked one student why he rated this month so low, and he responded, quote, "I felt quite restricted during these trying times because while we had a 2-week spring break, if this were any other year, such as 2019, I would be gathering with friends," end quote. With data from the 5 months, I conclude that the majority of students would rate their happiness levels at either 3 or 4, with their order going highest to lowest at 3, 4, 2, 1, and 5. The next question I asked students was, how often would you go out during the pandemic? This came to no one's surprise that once in a while would be the highest amount responded, but it surprised me that it would make up 76.7% of the votes. Another significance I want to point out is that no one responded at not at all, meaning that all of the students that I interviewed had gone out at least once during the pandemic. The next question I asked was, what do you think about COVID enforcement? This was on a scale from 1 to 5. Most students chose 3 as their answer choice at 53.3% of the results. While the number is significant, what stood out to me the most was that no one put 5 as their answer choice. My next question I asked was, have you felt your happiness levels go down or go up during COVID? Just like with the how often would you go out during the pandemic question, I was surprised on how many students chose go down at a staggering 73.3% of the votes. Of course, with the pandemic, we can't go out or hang out with other people, so people would be sadder because of it. Just like with the results in June, people were at an all-time low in happiness levels because of how they can't go out during the summer break because of COVID. The final question I asked was, should there be more or less COVID restrictions? The results were split almost between more restrictions and it's fine how it is now. Surprisingly, only one person voted less restrictions, 3.3% of the vote. I would have thought that the pie chart would be sort of evenly distributed between the 3 answer choices. After I gathered all of the data, I can come to the conclusion that yes, not only has the pandemic changed people's happiness levels, but different happiness levels are dependent on which period of the year and pandemic it is. More people are sadder than happier during these times than it shows. Almost 75% of students said that their happiness levels went down. I'll finish off my video by saying this. Most people's opinions are modest and in between instead of going far on one side or another side. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope my project gives you a better understanding on happiness levels during the pandemic.